Hello, hello. Welcome to our latest edition of Office Hours. My name is Mel. I am a product manager here at Apptentive by Alchemer. And today I'm super excited to be here with our GM and former Apptentive CEO, Robi. So we're going to just jump in and do some quick introductions on our side. As I mentioned, my name is Mel. I joined Apptentive as a product manager just over a year ago, and I was previously a customer of Apptentive. So I am just extremely passionate about continuing to improve and evolve our product offering, and I am particularly passionate about VOC, which we'll be talking about today. So I'll just throw it over to Robi for a quick intro as well. Robi?
Thanks, Mel. I'm Robi Ganguly, co-founder of Apptentive, and now I'm the GM of mobile over at Alchemer, where we have just recently joined forces, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. I'm super passionate about giving customers a voice and excited to talk a lot about how VOC helps with that.
Awesome. So before we start, I did just want to give you a high-level agenda here. We are about to hit the housekeeping session here. We'll go over a little bit about some newness and exciting news with Apptentive by Alchemer. And then we are going to hit on VOC strategy. And I will say the goal of office hours is to be useful for you. This isn't going to be a long presentation or monologue from Robi and myself, but more of an open Q&A time. So we're going to open it up with some tips and tricks around creating that VOC strategy that should hopefully help you kick ass in 2023. And then we'll leave the rest of the time for discussion. So if you have questions as we go, you can submit those in the Q&A section in Zoom, or if you're joining us on LinkedIn Live, go ahead and submit those just right in the chat area. We do encourage you guys to ask questions or discuss in the chat section here too. And just be sure that as you are in the chat section, you select your message to go to attendees and panelists, not just panelists, if you would like the entire audience to see. We do have the full hour blocked for you guys, so feel free to pop in and out as you see fit. And finally, we will be sharing a link to this recording and the slides out later this week via email, so keep an eye on that to land in your inbox. All righty. Also, just a heads up, we do like to use GIFs here. Schitt's Creek is our GIF theme of choice, so please appreciate some David, Moira, etc. GIFs along the way. Just to reiterate here, we are here to answer almost any question for you guys. If you are a customer of ours and you have something that you need to troubleshoot, we highly recommend reaching out directly to your CSM. They're going to be able to answer any question much better than we would, since they're already familiar with you, your business, your use cases. However, if you do have more general strategic Q&A type items, that's what we're here for. And yeah, we love exploring these types of topics. So hopefully you guys are ready to dive in. I see we have Madeline as our Apptentive events in the chat here as well, and asking you to drop in your favorite emoji so that we know that you are around here with us. So go ahead, let us know we haven't lost you yet. Drop in your favorite emoji there. Let's see if I can find mine. I have several favorite emojis, I feel like. I'm going to do this one because it's been a fun bug one. Okay, cool. Let's go ahead and get started. I'm actually going to throw it right over to Robi.
All right, so one thing I want to kick it off, especially for those of you who are our customers in the audience, is that we announced at the beginning of the year that we had decided to join forces with Alchemer. So we are now Apptentive by Alchemer. Who's Alchemer? Alchemer is a leading voice of customer and feedback platform that has been around for 16 years and has been doing amazing work in collecting feedback via email, text message, on websites, a crazy amount of complexity built into the platform with a tremendous amount of simplicity. So we're excited to bring two teams that have the same philosophy around giving customers a voice together and making it really easy. So when we're talking about what we do and how we think about this, what we're really proud of in building the Apptentive capabilities is that we were really focused on how fast you could get value, right? It's not enough just to have a plan for a VOC program. You have to have a plan to get out to market and actually hear from your customers. And so getting there faster is really important. We're extraordinarily good at that. So is Alchemer. We do mobile better than anyone else. If you are a customer of ours, you know for sure. That's why Mel is nodding vigorously, because as a customer, former customer, she knew that in the landscape of mobile, nobody really thought about all of this specific use cases around mobile. Nobody thought about the way to personalize and the way to take advantage of the operating systems the way we have. So we've been really focused on this. And this is part of the reason why we've joined forces with Alchemer, because they're so excellent in other places and we're so excellent here in mobile. One of the things that's awesome about mobile is that you can really measure shifts in moment of customer emotion, where customer is in your store, they're trying to buy something, they're using the rewards program right then and there, you can understand what's happening. So being able to understand that sentiment shift in moment is really important. And we've always been focused on hearing from the right customers. You know, our philosophy is that giving a voice to every customer is really important, but not every time. Right? The product managers and product leaders and people trying to make the decisions about where to take the company are not always looking to solve the problems of everybody. Sometimes they're really focused on solving the problems on a very specific audience. And so in those scenarios, hearing from the right customers is extraordinarily important. And we're really good at that. And then finally, low cost of total ownership. When we think about what it costs to stand up a VOC program, when we think about what it costs to actually collect and act on feedback, you're talking not just about the tools, but you're talking about the customization, the implementation fees. You're talking about technology to make sure that it fits inside your experiences. You're also talking about the teams, who's going to manage the feedback and how are we going to make sense of it. And you're talking about other pieces of engineering to extend it. How are we going to integrate across the enterprise? All of those things together, we were really proud of being able to reduce the cost of engineering and implementation and make sure that on an ongoing basis, the data is flowing where it needs to be. So what does that mean altogether? It means that our really beautifully simple in-app mobile experiences for collecting feedback are delivered really quickly and delivered in a way that customers want to answer the questions we ask, right? We start off with a really simple question for a lot of customers. Do you love our app? And then we get deeper, and then we get deeper. And all that's really important to the mobile experience and being thoughtful about what customers are open to. Customers on mobile are not typically ready to answer 25 questions. That's not the form or the expectation that they have. So let's talk a little bit about strategy. When we think about the strategy of voice of customer, you know, there's a whole gamut of ways that you can approach this. And what we tend to start with at Apptentive are questions, right? Starting out with curiosity and being really thoughtful about what we learn is a super important thing. So these are some really basic questions that we start off almost every customer engagement with. What do your customers like? What are they not enjoying? It's really easy today for us to focus on the things that people aren't enjoying, but the first question is really, really important here. You know, when people are using your software, when people are actually going to your stores, when they're engaging with your brand, there are reasons why. And the more that you and the teams around you can understand why, what they like, the better. Let's not just focus on the negative. Let's start out with, why are you here in the first place? What are you trying to get done? What do we do a good job of? So we can lean into that. But it is important to identify places of friction, places where things could be improved, where people are having frustrations. And you know, those two questions are separated out from the third. What do your customers want? Because your job in product, in marketing, in telling the story to the market, and customer experience and measurement and management, your job is really to also like read between the lines. And so when we ask customers just what they want, as opposed to also understanding what they like and what they don't like, we have a less full picture. We have more of a prescriptive picture. And then we can get more and more detailed about the journey. So, you know, there are a lot of customers who come in to your app or your website and they have some experiences, and along the way, they hit points of friction. It's not just one frustrating experience. It could be 5, 7, 15 steps, but one of those steps might be the places where they're really having a lot of trouble. So measuring customer experience isn't just about saying at the end, what's our NPS score? It's also measuring along the way, right? And measuring along the way allows us to take that journey with that customer and then say, here are the points of friction, here are the challenges. And sometimes that journey is about who they are. So when we think about specific cohorts of customers, your loyalty rewards members might have a very happy path, but the people who are not yet in that rewards program might have a less successful experience. There might be choices that you've made that make them feel less satisfied. So it's really important to think about at the top level, you know, what do people like and what don't they like, but then getting into what's that journey and what's that experience around. That truly, when you get into all these questions and you put it together, that can be 12, 18, 24 months of work in trying to put together a VOC program implement it, execute, measure, manage, and take action, because each of these questions opens up a whole set of other questions and oftentimes involves multiple teams and people around your company. So that's when we think about the definition of VOC. Like, there's a broad set of questions we want to answer with the voice of the customer. But what's the value of it? We ask those questions, we get an understanding, we understand that, you know, your loyalty rewards members are in a much happier place than those who are not. The value is retention, first and foremost. We are in an environment where all of us are spending a lot of time thinking about the things that can keep our existing customers happy, right? As the economy is slowing down and we're seeing consumer behaviors changing and people pulling back, preventing churn, keeping those customers happy is the first goal of VOC, is to understand what's going on for them so you can take the actions to make sure they don't walk out that door. The flip side of reducing and preventing churn is increasing loyalty. And we separate these out. They're not just the same point, because loyalty also involves spend frequency, visit frequency. And so if you're increasing loyalty, you're not just keeping a customer around, you might be actually getting them to invest more and spend more time and energy with you. And really loyal customers are going to bring other customers in. So increasing loyalty can also be part of the marketing function in terms of evangelization and bringing other people into your funnel. And then finally, informing product decisions. You know, today's product manager is tasked with a number of really important jobs across the enterprise, not just delivering on the app or website features and those capabilities, but also informing people across the team about what that means, what business value it drives, and also taking that data that comes out of the usage of these digital platforms and putting that back into the company to make it smarter. And so it starts really with understanding your customers so well that you understand what to build next. If you really want to take the next level, maybe you have a VOC program up and running and you want to go, hey, how do we upgrade this? One of the things that we see our customers increasingly doing is, because in mobile customers are so much more conversant, that more of them will answer questions. We're able to get down to the individual level and understand why customers feel the way they do. When they shift their emotions, we're able to say that the loyalty rewards members in the Northeast area of the country who are going to your stores are having a less successful checkout experience. And it turns out that the POS systems might be the reason why that is, because you haven't upgraded in that region. Being able to understand down to the individual level and with the context of where they might be shopping and what they might be purchasing is really helpful to get to the why. And then being able to really follow up with customers and ask them, hey, you said you didn't have a great experience, directly following up with them and saying, well, why? Tell us more, can allow you to troubleshoot problems. And a VOC program that doesn't just measure, but it also allows you to act is really the top of the stack. That's what we're all trying to get to. So there are some ways in which you can take feedback data to enrich and enhance your CRM. So for example, if you have customer records in Salesforce, pulling sentiment data out of Apptentive is really easy, and pulling it into Salesforce to allow you at a customer level when those things have shifted is important. And being able to think about that customization and personalization of the feedback experience itself. If you know a customer last time around didn't have a great experience, this time around, when you ask for feedback, being able to acknowledge that, it seems like a small tweak, but it does feel personalized. And our expectations as consumers continue to rise, especially in mobile, right? In the day and age where I can open up my Starbucks app and it says, hello, Robi, you have 7,200 points. I don't have that many points, but being able to really personalize what you're doing and say, we know you didn't have a great experience, we'd like to follow up with you, is much different than, hey, how are you feeling today? When the last experience you had was crummy. That's probably not the best way to go. Yeah, and I'm speaking so fast now because I've had 1,700 points of coffee this morning. So the things that we see around this as we get into a place where we're using feedback data, not just in the product manager's hands, not just in the CX team's hands, but also in the hands of the entire enterprise, are that cross-sell and upsell campaigns from marketing can be informed. When you have really active, engaged, loyal customers who are saying, I love what you're doing, taking them into a place where they help you grow the business, maybe through a refer a friend campaign, taking them into a place where they help you grow the business because you're showing them something that's a beta that you haven't yet released to the rest of the market. These are places where our customers are actually driving adoption and revenue growth from their repeat fans. And then what we really, really are excited about is that the more that the companies we work with are actually recognizing that appending customer feedback data to their personal profile data allows them to unlock use cases, is that the people who are in charge of data engineering and prediction modeling are starting to layer on this information in order to make predictions about who's going to be most loyal and what's going to change next. So there's a lot here to really tell you how to go from what is happening and what people feel to why they feel that way. And there's a lot of power in moving that data into your other systems so that you can take action on it. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Mel to get more deep into some of the categories of feedback and how we really execute here.
Awesome. So you're looking at a slide that I put together when I first joined Apptentive back in January of 2022. And that was, hey, how do we look at feedback from a strategic standpoint? How do we bucket this so that it's easy to create that strategy? And so I have 4 main categories that I like to look at when I start thinking about a VOC strategy. The first one is probably the easiest one to know, especially as a product person, is that new feature feedback. So you just released a feature and you want to hear from your customers immediately. So this feedback strategy is meant to hit your customers who have recently used or explored or are looking at the new features that are available. And this is really meant to drive iterations to that feature. Hey, what did we miss? What did we hit on here, and what did we miss the mark on, so that we continue to iterate and improve this feature for you in the future. The product development process does not end when you release something. It is continuously circling and iterating so that you can keep going and keep making delightful experiences for your customers. The second one here is around future initiatives. So a lot of times you maybe have a user research team that is able to go in and start research before you are launching things. That is ideal state. Sometimes if you guys are product folks, you wear a lot of hats and you do this on your own without the support of a research team. However, if you are trying to validate any of the ideas that are in your backlog, this is a great thing to look at. Hey, what do I have coming up that I maybe need a little more insight on? Whether it's looking at wireframes, whether it's a light usability test, that counts as VOC, that's voice of customer. And so looking at future initiatives you have coming up down the roadmap and seeing, hey, what can I start asking and probing on so that I know that I'm building the right thing out of the gate. The third category here is around customer engagement. So how do we create regular, casual conversations with our customers who will provide us with direct feedback without having to ask them, right? I think that this is really important to build those relationships up, to have the opportunity for folks to come in and say, hey, I just wanted to give you some feedback. And it might not be necessarily directly related to a new feature or future initiative. It might be just like, hey, they ran into a bug. And like, you want to get that feedback. That feedback is extremely important. And having that open dialogue available for your customers is really, really important. And then the fourth category here is just kind of like your general bucket. How do you want to learn more about your customer base? Do you want to dig into more of the user personas? Do you want to start feedback groups? Do you want to make sure that you are touching base with your customers in a different, unique way so that they feel like they are a part of something to increase that brand and customer loyalty that we talked about beforehand? This bucket is one of those that it's kind of a one size fits all. You can throw whatever you want in there, but I do think that it's really important to continue nurturing your specific customer personas. And that you're able to continue to refine them, because we're all people. Your customers are evolving just as your product is evolving. And it's really important to stay on top of that and just do like a little check-in, like, hey, is this still accurate with what we had, outlined as a company 2 years ago? And odds are things have probably shifted a little bit. So how do you take that? How do you iterate? How do you make sure you know who your customers are? So whenever we look at the next couple of slides here, just think about how you could relate back to these feedback categories as you're continuing to search on how you create this VOC strategy for 2023. So first things first, you want to ask yourself the following questions anytime you are launching a VOC initiative. What do we want to learn? How do we plan on getting that information? How can we act on the findings that we receive? How do we close the feedback loop? And then how do the above items connect with our larger strategy? These are all really important things as you're, maybe you're writing out like a one-pager for your VOC strategy where you're just trying to hash through things. Like, these are the things that you want to make sure that you understand. I think as you think about putting together a VOC strategy, it's not just send a survey, look at results. There's a lot more to encompass a full strategy if you want to make sure that you are going to make an impact and you're going to actually take that feedback into consideration to improve your product. So super important to kind of consistently ask these questions as you go through that VOC initiative process. And we have 3 things that you can do right now. The first thing is so important, and it is planning consistent VOC efforts to capture that customer feedback. You have to have ownership over a VOC strategy. It's whether it's quarterly, monthly, weekly, whether it's, hey, I just want to get VOC for new features and that's it. Like, you have to make sure that you're committing to something and making sure that you write that down and hold yourself accountable. Because if you don't, like, this is something that can very strongly like slip away. And it's so important to driving a healthy product roadmap and a healthy consumer relationship. And so I want to make sure that, like, anyone who's in this call right now, like, if you are planning on doing a VOC strategy, like, make a promise to yourself, like, I want to do this monthly. Like, every month I'm going to evaluate what I want to learn, how I want to learn it, how I'm going to look at that feedback, how I'm going to make decisions based on that. I want to make sure that everyone is like very pumped about doing that, because then it just becomes about a part of the process, right? And it doesn't have to be monthly. If you are like releasing stuff all the time, this could be a weekly practice. Or if you're a little bit like, hey, I don't really know where to start, quarterly is a really great way to do that. Like, look at your OKRs. If your company does OKRs, like, how do you embed VOC into a successful quarterly strategy? But whatever you do, just make sure you make that commitment and hold yourself accountable. It's also doesn't just have to be you. Like, you can have a cross-functional group of stakeholders who are all invested in receiving customer feedback. It's not just good for the product roadmap. It's great for your marketing team. It's great for your sales team, and to understand a little bit more about like how your customers are thinking about things so that they can use similar verbiage, so that they can continue to refine, and how they're doing outreach as well. So it's not just a product focused thing. This is definitely cross-functional. Step number 2 is to analyze that feedback in a timely manner. I don't know if anyone else is guilty of this. I for sure was when I first started market research journey, 10 years ago. Like, you'd launch a survey and be like, cool, eventually I'll see results for this. And then something happens, everything else piles up, and then you're like, oh shoot, I probably should look at those results, right? So once you launch that initiative and you have that meaningful number of responses, whatever that sample size is, which, by the way, one of my favorite things about Apptentive whenever I was a customer was I could launch a survey and 24 hours later, I would have 20,000 responses, which is insane. Great sample size, could very, very clearly see what my decisions should be, what those trends are. Highly recommend. The mobile stuff is just, Apptentive is a game changer with that if you guys haven't used our product yet. But being able to get those responses in a really timely manner, grab that data, and then really look for those trends, red flags, or even just like little interesting tidbits in like your open-ended answers that can help you make better informed product decisions. And sometimes too, like, people will be like, hey, like, I just have like a little bit of feedback and there's like maybe a live bug. And like, maybe they didn't report that anywhere else, but now you have it in a survey. It's really important that that's timely, because then you can go in, look at it, and get it fixed, and then close the feedback loop with them. And that brings us to number 3 here, which is creating the action plan to follow up on feedback. Once you've gathered that feedback, if you've identified some trends, that's great. And now it's time to adjust your backlog, your roadmap, or your go-to-market strategy to accommodate that type of feedback that's come in. Don't forget to close the feedback loop. This is so important. Apptentive is great. We have a functionality called response targeting, which basically says, we've collected this data, we heard you, and now we can directly follow up to the folks who were, let's say, had logged a bug or noticed or asked for a new feature. Let's say they all said, hey, I need this one feature. You had 3,000 people tell you the same thing. Great. Now you can, 1, create that feature. 2, you have a group of customers that you can tap on for more feedback as you go through developing that feature. And 3, once it's released, you can be like, hey, we heard you. We specifically heard you. And now here's what we've done to make that better. It's so great to just be able to have that like ability to close the feedback loop so intentionally with a group of customers that were clearly passionate enough about that feature to like tell you about it. So having that action plan to follow up is so important. And it is a part of your overall VOC strategy. Again, it's not just like seeing survey responses and going like, that's cool. Like, now what? You want to make sure that you're acting on that. You want to have a really solid feedback plan. And even if you prioritize something in your roadmap and you're like, shit, we're not going to get to this for the next 6 months, you can still communicate that. You can still say, hey, we heard you. This is prioritized. We anticipate launching it in Q4. Keep an eye out. Like, that level of transparency not only increases trust with your customers, but again, it hits on that thing of like, hey, I gave you feedback and like, it's clear that you're listening to me. So I'm probably going to give you more feedback in the future. It just continues to build and build that trust and that loyalty that we talked about before. Alrighty. So as we look at this is just kind of like a dumbed down version of what we just talked about, gathering that feedback, being able to turn it into an actual request. So you might get feedback and really not know what to do with it. Like, I don't know what this means. What does this actual request look like? Oftentimes people are coming to you with a problem and not a solution. And so you do have to kind of dig into, what is this actual request? That might be, hey, I need to follow up and like dig a little bit more about what you're asking about. But just because they're giving you a solution or feedback out of the gate, like, doesn't mean that that's the actual solution to the problem. You still have to process that, understand what the request looks like, and then come up with a solution that works for your entire team. And then we layer it in our prioritization. So we've talked about prioritization matrices before here in office hours or one of our webinars, but it is really important that you're making sure that you are prioritizing the right things. Just because somebody asks for something doesn't mean it's going to be the #1 thing that you work on. And we do have some examples that I think are really great to look at here from a high to not applicable prioritization process here. So if you get feedback that someone can't log into your app after the latest update, they reset their password, it doesn't work. Cool, that request is coming in saying I can't log in. And your solution here is to identify that bug and then fix it, right? So, hey, we heard that there is like an actual bug in the system. We are taking that very seriously. That is a high priority for us. And we are going to fix that. Whereas if you go kind of down the line here, the last one on the list is prices are too high. Okay, they want lower prices. Okay, a solution could be like reduce the price of items available, but like, priority wise, like, that's probably not our top priority because it's working for other customers, right? And then you have everything in between. And so just making sure that you're taking that feedback into consideration. And just because you have a large quantity of a very specific piece of feedback doesn't mean that that's always going to be the top priority. I mean, you guys know, like, things like security and compliance and login bugs are significantly more important than potential new feature requests. So you do have to still be very cognizant of what type of feedback is coming in. But if you are seeing like repetitive, like over and over again type of feedback, like, yeah, you should take that into consideration. You should prioritize that accordingly. Again, if your customers are asking for it and it's a part of your larger company strategy to make sure that you're solving that type of problem, it should bubble to the top. And I think that that's really important. I think that is it on my end. Let me hop over here. Oh yes, we have a good old Moira gift. Okay, so full transparency, Google logged me out and is asking me to change my password right now. So all of our Q&A is living in a Google Doc. So I'm going to do that. But as I am doing that, I want to make sure that you guys are aware that we have a little Q&A button down there. We've got our chat going on here. If you have specific questions about VOC strategy, about Apptentive, about Apptentive by Alchemer and how we're moving forward there, we have plenty of time to discuss. Robi, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Well, I think it's always fun to get into like a little bit of explicit stories, right? Just to help people understand it. So as a PM, you had to go through the prioritization process. Do you have any explicit stories of like a place where taking in customer feedback helped you shift the priority to high? I love that chart that you're talking about and like thinking through some of these problems.
Yeah. So one of the, when I worked for the company that I implemented Apptentive at, my product was kind of like the redheaded stepchild of the organization. It was a mobile app that was specifically in the smart home space. However, I worked for an HVAC company, and this was also the mobile app that every HVAC technician would go to and tell their homeowners to go download. The name of the app was not the name of the actual company, and it was extraordinarily confusing for everyone. And so we actually went through and did some research around, hi, what are your expectations whenever you're downloading this type of mobile application? And are you confused right now as to why there is a disconnect between the name of this mobile application and the brand? And almost everyone, and just full disclosure, the majority of our audience was not very tech savvy either. So that does take into consideration as you think about user personas. But we ended up getting like overwhelming data that was like, this is confusing, I don't get it. And also they were hesitant to download the app in general because we didn't have a good app store rating. So my first like initiative as a product manager for this mobile app was to what I did, it was called Project 5 Star, which included implementing Apptentive and starting to do a lot more aggressive feedback and app store ratings. However, as we continued down that path, it was very clear that we had to do a rebrand, which like it, as you guys may or may not know, is a huge overload. It's a huge lift. And so we did a lot of like just general branding feedback to understand, okay, what makes sense? Are people actually using these IoT features that this app was initially, meant to do or not? And how do we make sure we're prioritizing what the user sees immediately when they're opening the app? So we did have a lot of feedback that came in directly through Apptentive, not only on the branding side, but also on one of our features was just overly complex. Like people could not figure out how to use the scheduling feature in the mobile app. And that allowed us to dig deeper and deeper and deeper to create a much more simple experience. Again, our users were not very tech savvy and continue to refine that. And we pulled people to do usability testing whenever they opted in to basically say, hey, yes, I would like to talk more about why this is confusing. And it just became such a prominent like complaint. It was also, if you guys are familiar with the Apptentive product, we have our love dialogue. If they say yes, they love the app, great, we'll ask them to rate. If they say no, we offered up a survey. And in that survey, it was like very clear that people are like, I don't, because this one feature is so frustrating. And so we were able to gather both quantitative and qualitative data to like continue to go through that experience update. And honestly, like, I feel like so many of our customers have those use cases where it's just like, shoot, like we knew it was not great, but we didn't know how bad it was. And it was like, that's prioritized immediately. So I don't know, it was really fun. It's fun going through that type of data because you get so much of it. And then it's really, really easy to continue like digging deeper and deeper and deeper and underlying causes around why people are not liking something.
I love that story because I can imagine being in your shoes and thinking, well, we've looked at analytics and here's the scheduling feature. The analytics, it looks fine. There's nothing conclusive about them dropping off or not. And then, we go through the whole app and we're pretty comfortable with it and people are using it. And then when the feedback comes in and it's just really hammering on that one point, all of a sudden the temperature changes around it. It's like, all right, like when this many people are saying the same thing, we better look at it through a different lens. And so it's like that voice of the customer also like scrapes off a little filter that you might have as a team and says, no, you asked and here's the answer. And it's really hard to understand your customers all the time. Like you're not necessarily in the field. You're dealing with HVAC systems and these people who are using the apps are in the field. And when they're in the field and they've got like 3 minutes to schedule something and it takes, 5, that's just a huge problem. But you're not necessarily being like, you're not able to be empathetic to that until you hear from them. So it's a really hard problem to solve that, with digital products, it's just becoming more and more obvious that it's a hard thing to do without getting into a customer's brains.
Yeah, and we touched on like just sentiment briefly during this one, but I think it's really important too to note, like if someone's going to download an app and it has a 2.8 star rating, like immediately they're going to think something is wrong with it. like immediately they're going to open and look for things that are like not good because their brain is, conditioned to say like, I only want to download anything that's like 4 stars or above. And so that was such a big thing, not only for one, getting people to trust us out of the gate, but two, like team morale was different. It was like when we went to 4.8 stars because they realized people actually like enjoyed using the mobile application, like you could tell there was a change in our team dynamic. And it allowed us to say, okay, cool, we're getting all of this positive feedback that then we can like push back into our team. And it continuously, like, you mentioned that earlier too, like asking for the good stuff is great because it allows us to be better. It also allows us, again, to have that like boost of like, hey, we're actually doing something right here and something meaningful. But yeah, there are going to be people who ask for other things as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that point about the team, right? When the team knows that their hard work is paying off, like it's just really motivating, and in software, I don't think you can I think we underestimate. I don't think you can overestimate the value of being really connected and feeling like what you're doing matters to your customers. And I think we probably undervalue how many people on the team really are eager to hear from customers, right? When we ship digital products and then we don't hear anything, we just look at metrics. It's very different from like somebody comes up to you and high fives you and says, wow, that was incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And it's, working with, that was my first job working directly with engineers, like developers. And I just remember being like, what motivates you guys? And some of them were like money. And I was like, that's fair. But the others were like, I like knowing that what I'm doing is making a difference, and being able to hear about that is so, so important. And I was like, great, cool. Like every meeting we started with that team, I would put some piece of feedback up, one negative, one positive, so we could have like the understanding that we are hearing from our customers and they are providing value and they are, having a positive impact on people.
Yeah.
All right.
We got another question, yeah?
Sweet, let's do it. I'm so close to being able to log in.
I see it here. Ashley, how do you recommend using feedback to look at user personas more intentionally? Are you proactively targeting certain user personas to get feedback that help you better understand them? Or are you retroactively aligning feedback with personas, or a bit of both?
All right. I love a good customer persona question. So for me, what I did previously, I just asked my customers, I was like, hey, how would you categorize yourself? And like give a brief description of each type of persona. You can, if you guys are doing high level personas, like their, job title, that's so easy. You already have that, you're able to target on that. But if it's a little bit more of like, a customized like B2C type of consumer persona, I just asked, because once you ask, then you have a bucket of people that you can start looking at a little bit more intentionally. So targeting on our front is super, super easy, because you can, once you get that answer, you can then follow up with anyone who has responded that way, and put them into a little bucket of your own, and continue to dig in that way. So I definitely recommend, like, from the simplest way to just ask people, hey, you might have custom ID or some sort of persona data that's already in your CDP that you can pass along as well. That's super helpful for understanding, again, like, hey, we've seen, maybe if you're not asking them explicitly, you're just gathering data points on it and they all kind of live in whatever CDP you have available. That's a great way to do that as well. But I don't know that I retroactively align feedback with personas. I do think that there's opportunity to start with a persona-based question and then skip them into the appropriate space to dig in a little bit deeper. I don't know, Robi, have you had any use cases on retroactively aligning feedback?
Well, the way I was thinking about it is when we're talking about connecting customer ID in the platform, and we're thinking about what that means. So when our customers pass along a customer ID, it means every piece of feedback is actually attributed to a certain customer ID. And then inside the walls of your company, you can pull that feedback in and marry it with your CRM. And that CRM might say, here's the customer ID, here's the customer name, here's how long they've been a customer, here are the things that they've purchased, here's the rewards member, or here's some other information that tells us about them and the type of customer they are. And what we've seen is some customers pull that data in, marry it, and then they're able to say, oh, the people we were most focused on were the people who hadn't made a purchase in the last 3 months. And so I see that a lot in like the consumer brands we work with, where it is retroactive, because what they're trying to do is go out and listen fast, but then understand more deeply who it is.
Yeah.
You know, the inverse is also starting to be true because of a feature that you developed and deployed last year, right? The ability to upload criteria like a customer ID. And so some of our customers are being a bit more proactive, right? They're coming to us with a list of 1,000 IDs who all fit into the people who haven't purchased in the last 3 months. And then they're asking those people, and only those people, something. So I think that's what I'm seeing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's a great point around just being able to import those that set of criteria. And again, I think we are both kind of in the same place. Like if you have that living elsewhere, you can get that added into the system so that you make sure you're targeting the right folks, whether it's a CRM or CDP or wherever they're, you know, gathering all of that data. I think that's a great way to look at that. And I think that just, I mean, for those of you on the call who like just have no idea about customer personas, like using these tools to evaluate and understand, like, how do we even learn who our customers are? That is a great way to use that and understand, okay, what are the motivations of our customers? What types of buckets are they falling in from a demographic perspective? And just gathering that feedback can help you make your customer personas and refine them and continue to iterate on them as well. I think we've done that in-house quite a bit on our front to make sure that we're targeting the right folks. But you know, if you're earlier in your journey here, it's a great way to start learning about who your customers are.
Patrick has a great question. I understand that Apptentive focuses on product feedback and digital experiences. Are there examples or stories you can share about how to execute on the full experience, including offline? We've got brick and mortar locations where our customers interact with frontline staff instead of an app. Tying the whole online offline story together is top of mind. So Patrick, I think that it's a question a lot of our customers ask us, because we are very fortunate to work with a lot of customers who are like large consumer brands that have locations that people go into, whether it's a store or it's a franchise, right? Going in and out of a restaurant. And so one of the things we think about is that mobile, because it's with you, the phone is with you all the time, can help you actually connect some of those experiences together. Maybe they're using their app to show up and initiate a curbside pickup experience. But that curbside pickup experience is naturally going to involve an associate at the store who has to come out and drop something in your car. So in those places, what we're helping people do is by passing along like location information or interaction activity, highlighting that this is something that's happening in the store, to ask specifically for feedback about people who are in the store. Like one of our customers for a number of years, really large media company that tends to have presences all around the world, and they also have a lot of like theme parks. And it turns out when you get off of a ride, they would love for you to buy some photos. Being able to be in that moment, potentially purchasing photos and using the app as part of the facilitation of the experience allows them to also ask about the experience in the park, right? And so that's one way of thinking about it, is that the phone is a beacon. But then the second way to think about it, and this is really topical, part of the reason we joined forces with Alchemer is that Alchemer has done a ton of the activity around collecting feedback from customers who might be involved digitally over email or text message, but once they go in and out of the store, they're not really using the app. And so what we're bringing to the market together is this ability to say, hey, if your customer comes in and out of your store and they're a part of maybe your digital loyalty program and you've got an email address, let's use the Alchemer email product to collect feedback there. Or let's use their workflow product to like follow up with a text message and learn about what they need or what they could do. So those are some of the places where we're connecting offline and online, and we're trying to just really figure out how to meet the customers where they are. And in the future, what we're looking at are there are more and more digital touch points that are in these stores, whether it's a kiosk to order something or it's a POS system. And our ambition is to figure out how to show up in those places too, to even further round out the picture. I hope that answers your question, Patrick.
Awesome.
And then here's another question. Oh, great. Are you about to type this in, Madeline? Let's see. Oh, the feedback groups. Yep. I'd like to hear more about feedback groups and how Apptentive can help manage and engage them. I'll turn this over to you, Mel.
Yeah. So first thing from a feedback group perspective is understanding who you want to get feedback from and how frequently. I think the best way to introduce this to your audience is, again, to ask, hey, we are looking for a couple of volunteers to join a feedback group. If you're interested, drop your email. Say yes or no, whatever it may be, so that you can start tracking who's willing to invest time and spend that level of effort that you need for a feedback group in general. Generally, when I think about feedback groups, it's not just like a, hey, I'm going to send you a survey. It's, hey, I'd like to do regular customer interviews or usability testing. So like being able to define what that feedback group is really important. And being able to manage kind of who has opted in essentially on the Apptentive side is a really cool feature, because then you can just serve up like a note, let's say. So you got 100 people who said, yes, I want to be a part of a feedback group. And a month later, you need people to participate in a study. You then can serve up a note that says, hey, we are looking for volunteers to participate in a study from February 1st through February 14th. Are you available? Yes or no? If yes, great, prompt them to whatever sign up page that you need, could be an Alchemer survey, and get them to opt into the time slot that makes the most sense for you to start having those conversations. There's a lot of ways you can do that. I think within the system, that feels like probably the simplest approach to just get them started, but you can't start a feedback group unless you ask. You can't just like send it to everyone and hope that you're not annoying them, right? Getting that initial opt-in, I think, is really important. We talk about eliminating survey fatigue a lot here too. And really at this point, it's like pop-up fatigue, right? Like, how do you make sure that you are not interrupting someone's user experience if they don't want to be interrupted? And so being able to get that initial opt-in, one, builds that trust that, hey, I said yes, and I would like to receive things in the future. But if they say no, great, hands off. I won't ask you, I won't bother you, I won't bug you anymore. There's always that group that in the other section of the survey will be like, stop sending me surveys. So if you can weed them out just out of the gate, that's going to be really, really positive for your user experience moving forward. So that's how I would go about that. Robi, do you have any other thoughts there?
I think the one thing I would add is, how does Apptentive help manage and engage? And we have been, since the early days, very focused on, if a customer answered a question, knowing that they answered it. And if you think about a lot of the platforms in the space, they're not necessarily intelligent about, oh, we already asked this customer this question. They just kind of like spit it out on a regular basis as a campaign. And like, if they don't answer, they don't answer. Our point of view has always been, if somebody answered, don't ask them again. If you know something about a customer, try not to bother them with that question. Because in the mobile landscape, people they're not necessarily willing to fill out 15, 20 questions. So I think one of the things that's implicit in our product is, if customers have answered certain questions, then you can say, I only want to talk to the people who have answered these questions, or I want to not talk to the people who have answered these questions. And that's a part of how implicit in the product we're managing feedback groups too, so that it's kind of dynamic based upon what you've done before with them.
Yeah. Yep. For sure. The other thing I thought of too was we have fan signals that allow us to hit on, those folks that are really, really committed to being loyal to your brand. And I think a lot of times that's a really great place to start with feedback groups, because that they're already invested in you as a business, or you as a company, or you as a product. And so being able to leverage that as another component of like, who do I want to look at? Great. I want to look at my loyal fans, like amazing. Now, that doesn't mean you should never not talk to folks who said that they're not enjoying your brand. In fact, they provide extremely valuable feedback. but they might be a little bit harder to, get to participate in something. And so it's also really important to be able to separate those two types of groups, because your messaging to group one is going to be very different from your messaging to group two. Like, hey, we're so happy that you love our brand. We'd love for you to participate in this thing that we have going on, versus, hey, we've heard you. We know that we can do better. We'd love for you to tell us how. And it's just little sentiment changes like that and how you speak to these different groups that will allow you to resonate more, like, better. And honestly, like, if you're someone who's been like on thumbs downing like this entire experience, and then someone comes in all chipper, like, oh my God, we'd love for you to tell us about this, you're probably gonna be like, screw off. So there's just a lot of ways you can do that, and it totally depends on your goals of the program. But again, just a lot of ways that you can approach that and dig into it. And if anyone ever wants to like talk about use cases too, like, we're always available to geek out on that stuff.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I like that.
Cool. I think that is it from the Q&A today. Awesome. So if you guys have any questions for the team, if you are already a customer, please feel free to reach out to your CSM. If you want to talk about any of those items around creating a feedback group, or even just like kickstarting your strategy for the remainder of the year, your CSM is going to be a great contact for that. And if you're not a customer, we are super happy to talk to you. We have the ability to schedule a demo that is linked out here, that we just dropped in the chat. And yeah, we're always interested in learning a little bit more about your use cases and your company and what you are looking to accomplish. So if you want to schedule that demo and just get chatting, we are happy to do so. Amazing.
Anne and Patrick, thank you for your questions. Appreciate you being here.
Yeah, and we will have our next office hours on March 1st. And topic is TBD at this point. So if you have any topic requests, let us know. Otherwise, that's it for today. Thank you so much for attending.